Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from Jakarta. Welcome to 1000 Abrahamic Circle virtual public discussion. My name is Rahajeng, and I'll be your MC for today. This event is presented to you by 1000 Abrahamic Circles Project, an interfaith peace project under Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia. Today's discussion will be entitled Minority to Majority Dialogue, Assisting a Receiver for the Minorities' Messages. Before we begin our discussion, I would like to introduce our distinguished speakers that will be joining us today. First, we have Reverend Tabitha Kartika Kristiani. She's a professor of Christian education at the Faculty of Theology at Duta Wacana Christian University. She'll be representing Christian minority from Indonesia. Welcome, Reverend Tabitha. Second, we have Mr. Ziad Jamil, or Zaidan. He's a high school teacher in mathematics, electrical, and energy studies. He'll be representing Muslim minority from Sweden. Welcome, Mr. Ziad Jamil. Next, we also have Mr. Josh Muck. He's a trustee of the Student Christian Movement of Great Britain. He'll be representing Christian majority from the UK. Thank you for coming, Mr. Josh Muck. And last but not least, we have Mr. Ahmad Al-Fajri. He's a lecturer at the State Islamic University of Syarif Hidayatullah, Jakarta, and he'll be representing Muslim majority from Indonesia. Thank you for coming, Mr. Ahmad Al-Fajri. Thank you, speakers. We are pleased to have you here. Before we open our discussion, I would like to present an opening remark video from Dr. Dinopati Jalal as the founder and chairman of Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia.
Assalamualaikum, Shalom. This is Dinopati Jalal. I'm the founder of 1000 Abrahamic Circles program. I want to say hello and express our appreciation to all the speakers who are joining us here today. Ziad Jamil from Sweden, Reverend Tabitha from Indonesia, Ahmad Jafri, Al-Jafri from Indonesia also, and also Josh Mock from the UK, and Emily functioning as a moderator from Sweden. The topic today is about relations between minority and majority, a heart-to-heart conversation. We at 1000 Abrahamic Circles program have always believed that freedom religion is critically important, but it's only half the cup. The other half is respect. It's no use if you have freedom of religion, but you end up using that freedom to espouse hatred or resentment or discrimination or harassment towards other religion, other faith. So very much freedom in all circumstances has to be coupled with respect, with mutual respect. And this is why the topic of relationship between minority and majority is very important today because respect has to be given and earned and developed by the two sides. Respect for what? Respect towards the rights of the other side. Respect towards the boundaries that the other side has. Respect towards the sensitivities that the other rights has. And if we do this, if there is those mutual respect in those areas, then we can be assured of a peaceful, harmonious, tolerant state of relations between all segments in society. And I think any society that claims to be democratic and that aims to have stable and positive political development must have a way where the minority can feel at home, can feel protected, can feel safe, and can feel equal before the law with everyone else in society, no matter what is their size and what is their status. That is definitely a recipe for peace and for progress. And I think all of us have a lot to learn from one another, Western countries, from Muslim countries, from any other countries with different attributes. We all have things to learn and to share with one another based on our historical experience, our achievements, and also our mistakes. So I very much welcome and look forward to listening to the discussions, this very important discussion that are taking place in this forum today. I thank everybody for allowing some time to share their views, and also for all those who are joining this important dialogue today. I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much for the opening remarks, Pak Dino. Now, without further ado, let's start our discussion, and I'll pass the floor to the moderator.
Thank you very much, dear MC. And welcome everybody, and thank you for tuning in with us today. My name is Emily, and I am a student of Global Studies in Gothenburg, Sweden. But I'm currently working with the 1000 Abrahamic Circles project here in Jakarta, Indonesia. And I will be your moderator for today's virtual public discussion. First of all, I also want to show my appreciation for today's speakers. Reverend Tabitha, we have Mr. Seidon, Mr. Josh, and Mr. Ahmad. I am very eager to hear what you all have to say to my questions today. And I would also like to encourage the audience to ask questions to the speakers in the chat, and we will choose a few to answer in the end of the discussion. The theme is, as you already know, minority to majority dialogue, assisting a receiver for the minorities' messages. And the focus will be on religious minority and majority relations with representatives from the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, and Islam. A healthy and friendly relationship between the majority groups and minorities is essential to avoid conflict and to reach durable peace. Unfortunately, this is not the world that we live in today. And in regards to religious groups, the last 10 years, we have seen a rise of discrimination globally from both governments and social groups. According to Pew Research in 2019, Christians were discriminated against in 153 countries, Muslims in 148 countries, and Jews in 89 countries. And something that is to remember in the view of these statistics and in terms of minority to majority relations and minority rights is that a majority group somewhere can be a minority group elsewhere. But I'm very positive that we all would like to keep our rights everywhere. Before I open up with the first question, I want to say something that is important to have in mind when we enter the discussion. The rights of minorities are not about giving privilege, but to bring all humans and identities to a minimum level of quality in coordination with the human rights. And with that being said, I will now ask the first question. And I thought it would be interesting for us to know a little bit more about homogeneous societies and heterogeneous societies. So I wonder, Josh, if we compare these two types of societies, what are the positive and the negative sides that you can think of, both in theory and practice, and what would it look like with these types of societies? Please.
I think it's an interesting question. I'm not sure there are any benefits to having a homogeneous society where everyone is the same, where everyone is thinking the same. I don't think it's achievable. I think in history we have seen various governments or regimes try to create societies that fit their mold, and they have never been successful in doing so. And I think that diversity and freedom of thought and religion and views is a key pillar of what makes society and humanity so unique and special, and therefore we should be advocating for societies with a diverse range of views that respect one another. And I think, it's a nice idea that we all agree and we all think the same and we all believe the same, but that's just not what the diversity of humanity actually is. And even within individual religious or political groups, there isn't unity of thought and there isn't unity of anything really. So we should be advocating for societies that embrace difference, and that can be difficult and that requires work. But I think it's worth doing that to create societies that celebrate diversity.
Thank you very much, Josh, for that. And I totally agree with you about society's uniqueness, and our diversity is what we have as humans. And in today's world that's becoming more and more globalized, I think the diversity is even growing everywhere. And Sweden is a country that is quite known for being diverse in many ways, and among them housing people of many different religions. But I wonder, Seidon, how is it to actually live as a religious minority in Sweden, and in your case, as a Muslim? What are the greatest struggles for you, both in everyday life and, as you can see, institutionally? And where do you think the most struggles are? Please answer.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, everyone. I'm happy to be with you today. It's a big question, and I don't know where to begin. But the thing is, I'm happy, double happy, if I can say so. Excuse me first, but my English is not the best. But I have my good friend Google Translate inside with me here, so thankful for Google. I'm double happy because today we see the Abrahamic religious people are gathered, because for me today is I have to, as the speaker before me mentioned, that there's diversity in the homogeneous group, in the majority, because the most difficulty is today for me as a Muslim is the secular part of the society. As a religious people, I have many friends who are Jewish, Muslim, and Christian. Like me, sometimes they don't feel very insecure to mention they are religious people. So that is the first thing in my daily life. Where can I say that I'm believing in God? Not I'm a Muslim, just this part. I'm believing in something above the mankind. That is the first struggle. But living as Muslim today, as a minority, is very difficult, and it has many, the Islamophobia and the racism increasing, and the politics is changing, and it's a very challenging experience. Muslims feel threatened every day in their daily lives and become more vulnerable to discrimination and exclusion because of their closed tradition and beliefs. I mentioned just say that believing in God is a challenge. So even simply things like renting a space from the commune municipality to conduct like Eid prayer or have some Arabic school to learn read Arabic can be very challenging. So mosque and Muslim schools are also under tremendous pressure and face closure without any valid reasons. Take the woman, the Muslim woman has never felt so insecure and threatened in Sweden as she does today. She faced constant harassment, and both directly and indirectly, regarding the choice of clothing, and especially the hijab. The intolerance toward Muslims is normalized through, for example, how the nationalist strategy of removing advertisement from the public. If it's, for example, a woman wearing hijab in a peer campaign, they will take it away because they don't want to this part of the society be included. Me as a Muslim and many Muslim family. I have a daughter, 7 years old. She, like every little daughter, she wanted to do like her mom, intimate, and she wanted to wear hijab sometimes. Mom, I want to wear hijab in the school, or when we go to the shop or like that. Today, we are afraid to say yes. We say, no, you can't. I say, why? We are afraid that maybe a teacher, school, or neighbor may report the social service for potentially exposing our children for honor-related violence or coercion. And then we, as a family, may be facing investigation from the office. So, and on the political level, after we have a new political leadership now from the end of the last years, and we have a new agreement. They wrote a new agreement called the TIDO agreement. It's clearly indicate that the political direction want to reduce many of the Muslim aspects in the society. People feel very threatened and insecure. The civil society is a fundamental element in the Swedish society, is under pressure. So it is many difficulties. And it is another aspect of that. Many Muslim is become to gather itself to communities, to forums, only just Muslims, to become stronger economic, cultural. That's good, many benefits. But I fear we do the same thing as that's in the history. We can read and learn from the example the Nazi time, when a minority become maybe strong in economy or something else, especially in times there is a turbulent financial or like that, they will be a bigger monster. So the Muslims days today with each other, we call it the golden age today in Sweden. We have never been so gathered together, working together, put the difference between us in Islamic thinking in each some things. So it's a golden age for us Muslims forums. But I think we need each other in a bigger spectrum. Thank you.
Thank you, Seydan, for telling us a little bit of how it is to live as a person, as a Muslim in Sweden. And I have actually never heard about the golden age before among the Muslims. So it's very interesting for me to hear about that. And I'm happy for you, but I agree that it should not be seen as something for others to be afraid of. And I think what you said also shows that freedom of religion is not enough as a law, and we need to implement more things to make everyone feel safe in our society. And I would like to move on to ask Reverend Tabitha the same thing. You also live in your country as a religious minority, but in your case as a Christian and in Indonesia. So how is it to live as a Christian minority in a country like Indonesia? What are your greatest struggles, both in everyday life and institutionally? And can you see any similarities to what Seydan just said, or is it completely different? Please, Reverend Tabitha.
Yes, thank you, Emily. Hi, everyone. Thank you for this question. I live as a minority, as a Christian in Indonesia, but for daily life, I feel that I just like living in the other countries. For example, like when I was in the US or in Australia or Korea, I didn't feel something special living as minority in Indonesia, because I don't feel something stressful or under pressure as minority. I think it is because we have freedom to live, freedom to choose what to do or to buy, etc. But institutionally, sometimes there is a problem. I still remember it was Wednesday, December 7th, 2016. The Muslim People Forum, or we call it Forum Ukhuwah Islamiyah of Yogyakarta, forced Duta Wacana Christian University to take down advertising billboards depicting a group of students, one of them wearing a hijab. They argued that the hijab was a symbol of Islam. Therefore, such kind of advertising billboards could mislead Muslim students to enroll to a Christian university. On the same day, the university decided to take the billboards down. This news came up in the media, causing a polemic. An alumna who was a Muslim wearing a hijab wrote her experiences of being a Muslim student of a Christian university. She found out that Duta Wacana was a tolerant university which provided a room for her to pray and appreciated her religion. Others blamed Duta Wacana for taking down the billboards, which showed that the university was afraid of a radical group. So this is an example of being a Christian university within the context of religious plurality. It is not always easy to deal with religious plurality issues, yet mostly there is no such kind of problem in daily life. About 7% of Duta Wacana Christian universities, about 3,800 students, so 7% of them are Muslims, and they have no problem to study here in the school. The female student wearing hijab who came up on the billboard was a student in biology department, and she was chosen to be on the advertising billboard because of her academic achievements, not because of her hijab or her religion. But it is an example that institutionally, sometimes it happens. There are several problems, but like in daily life, I think I don't feel something special or something making me afraid of because I'm a minority.
Thank you, Reverend Tabitha. I must say that I'm glad to hear that you feel safe in your daily life. It makes me very happy. And I think that what you just told us can show a little bit about the difference also between Sweden and minority Muslims and Christians in Indonesia. So thank you very much for this example. And I would like to keep our focus a little bit longer on Indonesia. So Ahmad, I wonder if maybe you can tell us a little bit more about contemporary religious minority and majority relations in Indonesia. How do the religious majority engage with the religious minority, if they do at all? And if not, maybe you can give us some examples of how engagement between these groups could happen, maybe on high politics or on a grassroots level. Please, Ahmad.
Thank you for the question, Emily, and good afternoon, everyone. To respond to your questions, the engagement or interaction between majority and minority in terms of religion in Indonesia, in my understanding, has taken place for decades at both cultural level and political level. And at cultural level, there is a long history of positive engagement between different religious groups in Indonesia. I remember in 2013, I participated in a research by Ministry of Foreign Affairs we did a research on the portrait of religious harmony in Indonesia, and we traveled to several places in Indonesia like Jakarta, Bali, Medan, Ambon, and so forth. And we found many interesting facts. In some places, we found that both majority and minority not only respect each other, they also provide assistance to each other. In Jakarta, for instance, when there is an event in Cathedral Church, Istiqlal Mosque, who is located not far from the church, was providing assistance by opening its parking area to be used by people who come to the church, and vice versa. When there is an event in Istiqlal, then Cathedral Church also provide the same assistance. And in many places, we also found that both majority and minority, other than respect, they also provide security assistance to the minority. I'm not only talk about Muslim as majority here, but also Muslim as minority here. In certain places like Bali, you know, the majority of the population is Hindu, and Muslim and Christian are minority. In Bali, Hindu people there provide security assistance to Muslim and Christian. So those are only some examples, and I believe there are a lot more examples than that, showing there is positive engagement between majority and minority. And nowadays, we learn that the positive engagement between majority and minority in Indonesia has been more institutionalized. What I mean by this is, since 2006, if I can remember correctly, in Indonesia, we have what we call a communication forum for different religious beliefs. And the member of the forum is representative from every religious communities. So this is a forum to have dialogue and to communicate, and maybe to solve problem if there is one. So these are some examples of positive engagement at cultural level. And at political level, the founding father of Indonesia, I think, has set up a really good example of how the majority should respect the minority. When there was a question in the early years of the state building of Indonesia, what will be the foundation of the state? Instead of making Indonesia as an Islamic state, our founding father chose to embrace multi-religious principle, multi-ethnic principle, not to promote Islam as the foundation of the state, but to promote common value, common platforms such as Pancasila as the foundation of the state. So I think these are some good example of positive engagement between religious group in Indonesia. And I think this is something that we should keep now and keep forward. We should keep that environment in Indonesia. So that's maybe some of my opinions on this.
Thank you so much, Ahmad. I really enjoyed to hear about all the positive stories of how you don't, like, the different religions not only live side by side, but actually commute and bring each other up. It's very inspirational, and I hope that many other countries can do the same thing. I think we all would become much more happy that way. And to shift directions a little bit to the UK. So Josh, from previous public discussions, we have actually gotten to know a bit more about the interfaith community in the UK. And we have understood that it is quite well integrated, both on in the political system and in society on a social level. However, my question to you is, how, as living as a Christian majority, you might have some knowledge about this. How do the Christian majority talk about other religious minority groups? What are the prejudices and bigotries? And is the talk about other religious minorities in general positive or negative?
I think first it's important, as you said, to note that there is a strong culture of interreligious dialogue in the UK, and that's a really positive thing. And many Christians are really keen to engage with that. Of course, there are still misconceptions about what other religions believe, or how Christians should live side by side with them. Some Christian groups will talk about having to. Some Christians feel the need to proselytize or try and convert other people to Christianity. So sometimes interreligious dialogue can, if it's taken negatively, or if it's done in bad faith, it can actually be about trying to convert others. But I think generally, or at least the Christian circles that I'm involved with, it's very open discussion, and it's all about noting points of commonality, and also discussing how to work together to solve problems that cross religious boundaries. One really important organization in the UK is called Faith for the Climate, and they work together not to get consensus on theology or just for dialogue, but they work together as different religions to tackle climate change and fight for better policy. So I'm really encouraged by groups that are working together not to debate their religious beliefs, but rather note that we have these different views, but we have the common goal of seeing a better world where everyone can flourish, and where there are issues that affect all of us regardless of religion. And so I think it's really important that we in many ways focus on those together, and try not to focus on the differences that we might have in our beliefs.
Thank you, Josh. I completely agree with you. And I think that when you talked about commonalities, we all are people, we all want the same thing in life. We want to feel safe, have food and heat. That's what everyone wants. And I hope that you said a little bit about the Christian groups, that it might be different from group to group. Hopefully you can all influence each other for the better, if some of them might have values that seem a little bit not so friendly. As I mentioned in my opening, minority rights exist to bring all humans and identities to a minimum level of quality in coordination with the human rights. And it's not about giving privilege. But that makes me wonder a little bit, and I would like to ask this question to Reverend Tabitha. How is the religious majority actually affected by the rights of religious minorities? Please.
Yes, as Mr. Ahmad already said about Indonesia, who decided not to be a Muslim country, but we have Pancasila as the foundation of the country. Actually, it means that we appreciate all religions that exist in this country. But culturally, I think Indonesia is very good in tolerance, and in daily life, culturally, we don't have many problems. But institutionally, or in terms of law, there are problems we face. For example, permission letter to build or to renovate a church building. And for the mosque, there is no need to have permission letter. And the permission letter is always an issue sometimes some people would say no for a new church building, or even just to renovate the church building. So it has been a hot issue sometimes in many parts of Indonesia regarding the permission letter to build a church. So we feel it's unfair that the majority doesn't need any permission letter to build mosque, but for churches, we do. And compared with discotheque or other building, it's more difficult to get the permission letter to build a church. So we wonder why it happens. So I think the majority should think about this and should consider about the permission letter to build a religious building. And then also another problem, like wearing hijab in public schools. So this is public schools, not Islamic schools. Why female students are supposed to wear hijab, or if she is not a Muslim, she has to wear very long skirt, like Muslim students, Muslim female students. So it is also an issue in Indonesia. And then when the general election comes, the issue of religion always comes up. And I'm not happy at all about this. Why we use religion as an issue in general election, in politics. So I think it is not right, but it always happens. So I hope it will change. Don't use religion as an issue for general election or for the politics. And also I think law on marriage is also problematic, because in Indonesia, the couple should have the same religion. But in fact, we know that there are many couples that come from different religions and they want to get married, but the law doesn't allow that. So this is, I think, a problem in Indonesia. And also a law on adopting a baby or a child who already don't have their parents, and then it always comes up the problem. A Christian cannot adopt that child because he or she will become Christian as well. So it is a problem in Indonesia, even though in average we are peaceful in daily life, but actually there are problems that I think the majority should say something and do something to solve this problem. Because if the minority speaks, the result is nothing. So I think it's time for the majority to speak up about these issues, or maybe Mr. Ahmad can add with other issues that are still existing in Indonesia.
Thank you, Reverend Tabita. I am sorry to hear about all these laws actually that are against some of your humans. For example, getting married with whoever you want. I would say that is something that affects everyone in a negative way, not only those of a minority religion. I mean, everyone who hopefully one day will fall in love, it might affect them in a negative way. So that's very sad to hear. But you come back to the subject of schools many times. So I would actually like to talk a little bit more with Ahmad about that, since you are, as I know, a lecturer, and lecturers or teachers have very great possibility to influence the youth, and education is known to be the solution for many problems in this world. And since I know that you are a lecturer at an Islamic university, I wonder how could you or other teachers or lecturers in contact with the religious majority engage the Muslim students in Indonesia to promote a healthy relationship between the religious majority and minorities?
Thank you, Emily. These are really important questions. And as you might all know that nowadays with these internet revolutions and social media, young generations, including students, they have unlimited access to information on the internet. And research by PPIM in 2018 even conclude that many of young generations, including students, they learn about their religions through social media, through Instagram, through Facebook, through TikTok, not from the conventional methods such as learning religion from madrasa, from institution, or from books, or from teachers. They learn religion and how we should interact with other people from social media. And the problem is not every information on the internet is valid. Some of them, or maybe many of them, containing misled information. As I mentioned before, research by PPIM 2017 even found that even though conservative websites are not a lot in terms of number, but they are quite active in providing information, propaganda, and narrative, conservative information, I mean. Therefore, one of the main responsibility of teacher or lecturer today is to equip students with critical thinking. Because without critical thinking, because with critical thinking, they can examine which information is valid, which information is for propaganda purposes, which information is for conservative consumption, and so forth. If they do not have this critical thinking, they can be easily consumed with these conservative narratives, particularly relating to religious teachings and the way we should interact with people with different religion. And this is very unhealthy for relationship between majority or minority in general. So therefore, this is one of the main responsibility of teacher, or my responsibility now, is to provide or to equip students with critical thinking. And the other thing that a teacher or lecturer can do is to, in my opinion, to familiarize students with differences and to respect differences from the classroom. You know, by having familiar with differences and respect the difference, when they need to interact with wider society, multi-religious society, multi-ethnic society, they already have the foundations to respect the difference between, because they have been familiar with respect difference from the classroom. So I think these are two important things that a lecturer and a teacher should do to students, to equip them with critical thinking and to familiarize them with differences and to respect differences. That's maybe my answer, Em.
Thank you very much, Ahmad. And so, if I understand it correctly, we should keep up with the society's development and the new ways that the youth choose to interact, and make sure that we actually know what is happening there and be able to influence them where they are. And also, I think it's important when you mentioned that we should teach them about not only that the others exist, but also how we should respect them and treat them as well. That is very important. Thank you very much. Josh, I would like to hear from you, and this might be a bit personal, but very important. So how do you feel when a minority in your surrounding, maybe in the workplace or on public transportation or on the supermarket, is being treated in a unfair way, and how do you respond or speak up to that, or how do you think you should respond or speak up to that?
So I've been quite fortunate that I've never seen anything or experienced. I've never witnessed anything serious in that way, but I think in general in the UK there is a problem about how sometimes we talk about the Muslim community and that at times they can be demonized or scapegoated for certain issues in society, and particularly with the current migration issues and the current migration discourse that we have in the UK, that sometimes gets equated with religion, and I think we really need to encourage discussion in our society that is tolerant and literate of religion, and in general, I think the church has a big role to play in facilitating that discussion and for leading the way in tolerance and respect, because the Church of England has a institutional role in the United Kingdom. It's the state church. Certain bishops have seats in the House of Lords. So I think the church has a really, really big role to play in setting the example of how we talk about other religious groups, and for encouraging respectful discussion, and for calling out when discussions or when discourses are based on conspiracy or based on prejudice. And so I think as Christians, we need to reflect on how best we do that and how best we make sure that other religious groups are respected in society.
Thank you, Josh. So in regards to my question about how to speak up, do you think in maybe, social, on the bus or outside of your home, or maybe social media, do you think maybe the Christian community should take a lead in educating people to speak up, or just normalizing that it should be done, or as a follow-up question?
Yeah. I mean, there has been a rise in hate incidences in the UK, so it's a valid question. I think everyone should be encouraged to speak up against it, regardless of religion or position, generally, because if we want a tolerant society, then you have to call out intolerance, and you have to stand up to that. But it can be very hard in the moment to do that. So I guess preventing these situations from happening in the first place comes with good education from the very beginning, and encouraging spaces for dialogue and for hearing the stories of Muslims themselves rather than hearing them from others can as well be important. So yes, we should be encouraging people to call out hatred and violence, and we should be equipping people to do that. But I think that the focus has to be on prevention rather than tackling the issue as and when it arises.
I totally agree with that. That's what we're trying to do here today, a little bit. So thank you for that, Josh. I want to get back to you again, Ahmad, because I think it's very interesting that you have lived in Canberra, Australia. And I know that there you got to experience how it is to live as a religious minority. And I know that it taught you the importance of not only respecting others, but helping them too, which we have been talking a little bit about earlier. So I wonder, how can we get other people of religious majority to come to the same conclusion as you did, keeping in mind that they might not be able to travel to other countries and experience how it is to actually live as a minority in a country?
Thank you for the question. The point is that sometimes people do not like something only because they don't have knowledge about that. Therefore, knowledge comes before respect. In order to respect, sometimes we should have some knowledge about it. So that's what I experienced when I lived in Canberra a few years ago. So I have my respect because I know to whom I speak. And I understand that not every people have the opportunity to travel abroad to experience what I experienced. Therefore, public discussion like this, I think, is really important. The more we can bring people from different religious beliefs together in this dialogue, the more we have common understanding about each other. So I think for short terms, dialogue, interaction like this is really important. On the other hand, I think we should also have long-term strategies in order to create and to sustain the healthy relationship between majority and minority. So I want to quote opinions by resource person that I interviewed a few years ago about possible ways to create healthy relationship between majority and minority in the context of Indonesia. I want to quote some of their opinions. They say that I think it is time for us to rethink and revisit the way we teach religion in school or madrasah. As far as we know that a student has been taught their own religion. For Muslim, they teach about Islam only. For Christian, I don't know if they teach about Christian only or not. But from the point of view of my resource person, it is also good to have new method of teaching religion, which is religious studies. For Muslim, they introduce about Islam, but other than that, they also introduce other religion as well, Christian, Hindu, Buddha. So besides they know about their religion, they also have some understanding about other religion too. So as I mentioned before, in order to respect, we have to have knowledge about that thing. So by having this kind of method of teaching religion in school, I think this is a good alternative to look at in the future. That's it. I mean.
Thank you, Ahmad. And I totally agree with you. And knowledge comes before respect. It's interesting. And I think that, as you said, instead of only teaching people that there exist other people of other religions, we maybe should also talk more about who they are and what they believe in and how they live and their values, instead of just saying that they are there and we should leave them alone. So definitely. Seidon, living in Sweden, as both you and I do, I think segregation is not a new term for either one of us. And you talked a little bit about this before, so I thought we can bring it back now. So segregation is palpable in Sweden, but also in many other countries and cities around the world. And it has its, as you said, some positive sides, but it also comes with many negative sides. Integration, however, is an important tool to reach respect and harmony and to decrease social struggles. So I wonder, it's a hard question and a complex question, but how do we move away from segregation and homogeneity to reach integration and diversity instead? Maybe not only in cities and living situations, but among friends or in schools, for example. Please.
It's a big question and a difficult question. Yes, I will jump in my thoughts and in my answer now. The thing is, we talk about the knowledge. We have talked about respect each other's beliefs. We have talked about coexistence and everything that. Big words, very important words, but what we have to define them. For example, I will mention something very, very a little, I don't know, but take it with sportsmanship now, okay? For example, in Islam, it's forbidden with homosexuality. That's an important question and an important thing to believe in as a Muslim. Okay. In Islam also, it's very important to respect all mankind, but homosexuality is not defining the person, the human being. It's just an action between him, her, and God. Okay, that's our belief, our view in this thing. This example, just to show you how that we have to do a better work about how to define the big words we're talking about. We respect as a human being. We don't allow to do violence against them or do some negative action like them. If some Muslims do that, it's not defined Islam. So in today's Sweden, for example, they say everyone have a free choice to think about what they want and they have any belief. But if I say, for example, to my daughter, no, man married with a woman and women married with a man, and she mentioned it in the school, I will get big problem. Okay. In the same time, I learn my child that she have to respect everyone, despite what she think or believe. So we have some paradox in our big words. How will we define them? How will we practice them in the reality? So it's ironic and alarming for me that discrimination and oppression against Muslims in Sweden are happening under the ghost of being one of the biggest, the best democratic and free country that respect everyone's rights to believe and be as you want. So integration, segregation is begin, I think, with in the civil society level, on the with knowledge, and define more clearly how will we practice those words and those living, and then we have to take it out upper level for the Swedish government or the people who do the decides and the political arena. The climate, if you know, in Europe, in Sweden, even in Sweden, that they're shifting towards the high, more right nationalism, high right wing nationalism, and strengthening racism and Islamophobia. That's a golden age again, not just for Muslims, but it's I can take an example for many groups have become more strength together and starting to work together. We have a very good example called Amana in Sweden. There is Muslim and Jew are working together to stand against what is happening. For example, the Quran burning in Sweden, the Jewish Central Council was very clearly and talk and write very good things and stand with the Muslims against that actions. I remember and told the people to remember it's always begin with burning the books and end with burning people. I think that the difficulties we have in Sweden is not to compare with Indonesia, with all respect to all people, because we have what's called. I asked my friend here. Ignorance. Yes, I know the words. The ignorance among the Swedish people. Generally, very friendly people, but a big ignorance about religious people, and specifically for the Muslims. So when the right wing come and the nationalists come, they are easy to get the people on their agenda. So we have something called about the segregation. I can maybe mention this last one. you know about the what is called white fly, like that. I think I lived in an area in Stockholm. 2006, I moved to Stockholm. There was about 60%, 70% Swedish people, from other countries. But when more people from other country come, that more Swedish people left the place. So for me, how should we work to give more knowledge to the Swedish people to help everyone with the integration question? I think for us religious people, it's not the problem. We are sitting here and talking, and we have many things common, and it's easier for us to work together. But for me today, the secularism is a big challenge for everyone, and especially for the Muslims in Europe or all over the West. Thank you.
Thank you, Seidon. And I think it's really
I'm sorry,
important.
it's a question, and just I hope
It's
I give
okay.
you
It's okay. Definitely. And I think it's good that you bring up secularism, because I know that our project is mainly about the Abrahamic religions, but nowadays in the world, in many countries, trouble lays within secularism and religion versus non-religion as well. So I think it's good that you bring that up. And in terms of big words like respect, actually, I think it was from our previous public discussion, we talked about this with respect. Is respect really enough? I don't think so. Maybe we need more than respect, because you can always respect someone, but you don't have to engage with it. So it's good that you bring that up. I appreciate that. We have a lot to improve, but there is a lot that can improve too, which is really good. And speaking of improvements, Reverend Tabita, in Indonesia, has there been any improvements lately of your rights belonging to a religious minority, as you have gotten to experience in your life here in Indonesia? And please let us know also, how did these improvements reach? How did we reach these improvements?
Okay, thank you. So I think there is improvement in Indonesia. For example, regarding the problem of permission letter to build or to renovate a church building, there is an improvement. Like in my place several weeks ago, in a certain part of my town, Yogyakarta, in the morning, suddenly came up a banner saying rejection of building a church. But later on the same day, in the afternoon, the police took down the banner. I think this is a sign of improvement, because compared with several months ago, there was nothing to do by the police when a Christian family was asked to move from their house they just rented, because the neighborhood was recognized as Muslim housing. So it was really very sad how it happened in Yogyakarta, but it already happened. But nowadays there is improvement. It's getting better and better. And also improvement in society done by the people. For example, the interreligious dialogue nowadays are done by the NGO and the academic and also the students. So the interreligious dialogue is not done only by the elite leaders of the religions, but it goes now to the people, also to the young people. I think it's a good sign for improvement. And also interreligious education is starting to be built in Yogyakarta, for example, for high school and also for undergraduate students, because we think that young people need to have interreligious dialogue and also interreligious education for them to be more open to people of other faiths. So I think in Indonesia, there are several improvements, even though there are still more problems that we face.
Thank you, Reverend Tabitha. Well, I'm glad to hear that there's been improvements, although might not go as quick as we want to. And sometimes there are also setbacks, which I hope that we will overcome together. But in terms of setbacks, I think that also Seidon, you spoke a little bit about it before, but I think you might have some knowledge about this since you live in Sweden, where Rasmus Paludan chose to burn the Quran at several occasions, something that has outraged many Muslims in the world. So I wonder, is it important, or of course it is, but that other religious or non-religious groups based in Sweden support the Muslim minority community in Sweden after events like this?
Yes, the event shows us that people are good in their roots, and people they don't like those things, and people in Sweden have read the history generally, but forget it sometimes, because in Arabic, insan, one of the meaning is to forget. They create who forget. So it was actually a good. Jag ska bara ta fram den. I will now.
He's just gonna bring it so I can.
And now come the word I can, but sometimes I forget.
No worries. No worries.
Yes, attendance. It was a good attendance with the Muslim community about the burning. Who happened in different cities in Sweden. People was not glad about the reaction, not even the Muslim, and the reaction was not even representative for the Muslim community. All the mosques and the biggest Muslim organizations was against that. But in the same time, we have to acknowledge and talk about it was a big attack against the Muslims, or in the name of the law. Sometimes in the same time, the law people and the political arena come to us, the Muslims, Muslim communities, organization, and tell us you have to talk and tell the people outside Sweden that we are respecting the Muslims. So it was a difficult equation. So what we did is to talk with our own people in Sweden, and in the biggest thing we tried to not to get influenced from outside Sweden. I mentioned Amana. Amana is a great project that gather the Muslims and the Jew who have very much together is common. We have many Christian organizations. Those who talked most loudly about this and was against it was the religious people who understand it. Many on the, maybe I have wrong, but my understanding that many people, regularly Swedish people, was that we don't want a problem. Why did this Danish man come to Sweden to burn the Quran? He can go back to Danish and burn the Quran. The Denmark can burn the Quran. So we have again the knowledge have to come up and be available for the Swedish people about the thing about the Quran. For many Muslims around the world, the Quran is the most holiest thing. That is the holiest things in their lives. So it's not just a book. It's not just a text. It's a living. It is a method of living. So knowledge and more. We have some plan in a list how to work together, how to strengthen the knowledge in the society, in the grassroots level, among the business people and the what is called business owner, and among the people who's engaged in the political arena. But it will take a long time to go through it. Yes.
Thank you, Seydan. And for that, I want to ask the most important question, which you also already had touched upon a little bit, but what can the religious majority, and I also want to include the non-religious majority here, to help the religious minority access their rights to not have to endure oppression or other injustices? So the majority, if we focus on them for a bit, what can they or we do for you guys? Seydan, can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, the question was to me.
Yes, sorry. I just wanted to give us a follow-up question, and it was to you. So
Okay.
do you want me to say it again?
Yes, please.
Yes. I said you already touched upon it a little bit, but I would like to ask maybe the most important question. So how can the religious, and I want to include also the non-religious majority, help the religious minority to access their rights, to not to have endure injustices and oppression? So if we just focus on the majority, what can they or we do for you?
The majority can do much, but we have to establish cooperation models between regular people, between organizations, the religious, not religious, to break down the barriers and ensure. We have to do some priority about the dialogue and advocacy with the politicians and the authorities. So we start with the cooperation. We start to have the courage to speak to each other. Many, I mentioned earlier, many religious organizations, it's good with that. It's already done that for many years, interfaith dialogue and like that, many projects. We have one now. We have the majority of people have to take from the courage to refuse funding or participating and promote the TIDO agreement and the other forms of nationalism. And because it's not just the Muslims who are vulnerable for what was happening today, they are most vulnerable today. So I can give you for an example. I have a sister, have been worked many years in SVT, Swedish public TV. It's again many big words and many big thoughts and good thoughts and words, but in the practice it's not something else. She left SVT because everyone was affected when the right wing come to the political arena today, the TIDO agreement. So I think people, individual, organization have to take from their courage and begin to talk with each other, cooperate with each other, and refuse the funding and participating with the the TDO agreement. Otherwise, I don't know. It's very dark, but I'm a believer. I believe in the good in the human mankind and God. So we will fix it someday.
Thank you very much, Seidon. And with that, actually, all of my questions has been answered. And I think we have some time for questions from the audience. So if you just give me a second so I can read them. And let's see here. Okay, so for the first question, which is directed to Ahmad, I think I have understood it correctly, but how can technology and different applications help to connect the minority and the majority? Hard question.
Yeah, it's a hard question. But today, as I mentioned before, to communicate or to make a connection between minority and majority, there are a lot of tools or instruments that can be used. Not only technology, of course, technology can be very available for that, but also face-to-face communications. I mentioned before about a forum called in Indonesia, Forum Komunikasi Antar Umat Beragama. This is a communication forum among religious communities, and I think this is a really good forum to be used for everyone to communicate and to find solution for problems. I'm really sorry about what happened to Ibu Tabita about the permissions to renovate or to build a church, and I think that in this situation, the majority should speak more about that. So far, what I understand and what I feel that although Muslim are majority in this country, but only minority among Muslim speaks louder, and the minority is not really the moderate groups. Therefore, what we call here silent majority, and this is not really good. So in the future, I do hope, and I will try to be part of that. Majority should speak more about the equal right of every citizen in Indonesia. You know, in terms of nationhood, statehood, there is no majority and minority. Everyone is equal. They all have the same right. They all have the same civil right and guaranteed by the Constitution. And if there is discrimination taking place, the majority has bigger responsibility to speak up and to facilitate dialogue to find solution to the problems. So I think that's still a really big task for the majority right now. But I believe that given the situation right now, there is more interfaith dialogue, as Ibu Tabita mentioned before. There is new method of teaching religion in schools. I think majority should be able to speak louder in the future compared to now. So that is a response to Ibu Tabita concern before, Emily.
Thank you. I like that you talk to each other, even though it's virtual and it's a bit hard to have a discussion among us all. I'm glad to see it. Okay, so for the next question, we just got in from Alfredo from Yogyakarta. And I think this is directed to both Josh and Seidon, if you both or any of you want to answer this. So does the secular government has an influential role to maintain the relation and dialogue between majority and minority religions, or even non-religious people in the UK and Sweden? Any of you feel like, I think you can read it in the chat as well.
I mean, the UK officially is Church of England is the state religion. The King is the head of the Church of England, and religious belief is playing an increasing role in governance. And I mean, you know, our Prime Minister is the first Hindu Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. So the government does play a role, I think, in setting the standards for how we talk about how we do interfaith dialogue in the public sphere, and working with as many partners as possible to ensure that that is successful. And the Prime Minister as well has an envoy for freedom of religion around the world. So I think the government does play an influential role in maintaining the relation and dialogue between majority and minority religions. But I don't think that the British system is technically secular.
Thank you, Josh, for your answer. I hope you can hear me. My internet, unfortunately, is a bit unstable. Okay, great. I hope that whoever, oh yeah, Alfredo got his answer there. Seidon, would you like to add something to that, or?
Yes, one small thing. It is a difference between UK and Sweden. Sweden, they say they are most secular country in the world, so there are more acceptance for people who believe in God in UK. I feel more comfortable when I go to England. I have some people, Swedish people, Muslim people, so who left Sweden and moved to UK. So there are a difference between the two countries, and of course the government has an official role in this. But I'm a teacher in the school institution. It's mentioned very clearly. We have to separate religious beliefs and non-religious beliefs. That's secularism. So the secularism is the foundation in the school institution. Many times, students just they've been silenced from the teacher when they have another opinion about, for example, Darwinism and like that. So it is very clearly and very clearly with that in the school institution. So it's beginning in the school institution for the children, and outside in the society for the mainstream people, what they're thinking. It is implementation from the government, higher and downstairs.
Thank you, Seidon. Alfredo, I hope that you got your answer. We can hear that it's very different depending on where we are in the world. And for my last question, or not my question, but for the audience last question, it's to Reverend Tabita. So how can NGOs and social activists help to tackle the oppression or discrimination to the minority religious group on an international level?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think for NGOs or social activists, it depends on the level where they are. If they are only in the grassroots level in a certain area, it must be very difficult to get attention from international level. But for NGO, which is very high level, I think it's possible. And also we can use the media to speak up or to bring the information about the discrimination or oppression, because otherwise people from the international community would not understand what is happening in a certain part of a country. So I think we can use the media to raise the issue, to help international community to be aware of that problem. I think that is what NGO can do, because it depends on the level where the NGO is existing. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Tabita. And I think you give us some good examples of how the NGOs can help the minorities to not have to live through oppression or discrimination. And looking at the time, I think these were all the questions that we had time for today. And I want to thank you for all your great answers. It's been really interesting to listen to all of you. And I wish that we had more time, since this is a very important subject and we have only had the possibility to talk very little about it. But unfortunately, we don't today here. Instead, though, I would like to encourage all of you to continue this conversation at home, with your family and your friends, at work, in school, on social media, in your religious houses, and basically everywhere. And I especially want to encourage all of you who live as a religious or non-religious majority to listen to the minorities, to their needs and wishes, and really try to understand them and then help to represent them. As Dalai Lama said, only the development of compassion and understanding for others can bring us the tranquility and happiness that we all seek. Thank you once again. It's been a great pleasure to be your moderator for this discussion. And I would now like to hand over the floor to the MC again.
Thank you very much, moderator. And now our discussion has come to an end. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in with us. And thank you very much, Mr. Ahmad, Mr. Zayden, Reverend Tabita, and Mr. George for the insightful messages. I hope you have a fruitful discussion today. All right, thank you very much. And before we wrap up the event, I would like to invite everyone to take a picture together. Please turn on your camera and have the best smile. Okay, everyone, on my count, 1, 2, 3. All right, once again, 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you very much, everyone, for your kind participation. And before leaving the room, please kindly fill in the questionnaire provided on the chat box. And don't forget to follow our social media handles on Instagram at 1000 Circles Project and at FPC Indo. Once again, thank you very much and see you at our next event. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you very much.
Goodbye. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye. Thank you for
Bye.
your
Thank you.
time.